Hello everybody, this is Onion Gravy 64 here, and I'm going to talk to you a bit about the 6th generation Pokemon that we know about right now. There are a lot of things in the 6th generation that have been potentially changed, but I'm going to focus exclusively on the Pokemon we know about in this video, just to keep it low on the content so we can have it broken up into parts. We've known for a while now about the 3 starter Pokemon: Chespin, which is the grass type, Fennekin, which is the fire type, and Froakie, the water type. Chespin looked to me initially like a potential grass-ground type combination like Torterra, but as you'll have seen potentially from the trailer, it has used a dark type move and a water type move. Now obviously triple types don't exist and the odds of that are incredibly slim to nil. And just to put it into context, obviously water is a fellow starter type, so the likelihood of Chespin being the same typing as the Lotad family is incredibly unlikely. But we could possibly have another grass-dark combination, the same as Cacturne and Shiftry. So it is a reasonably unique typing, there aren't too many of them. When it comes to the fire starter Fennekin, it looks like a fox. You may have worked that out from the picture that I put on the screen there. But more importantly, in the trailer that we first saw, it used a psychic type move. And that obviously brought up a lot of interest about whether it'll be the second fire psychic type to go along with Victini. And frankly, I would think that'd be very interesting. I think it'd be more interesting as a type combination than grass dark rather, like Chespin. But it's not a unique type as we've seen from a Pokemon in the last generation. Its design has won many accolades with average viewers like you and I. Personally, I'm not as enthralled by it as most people. I actually think that of the 3 starter designs, I believe Chespin's is at least the most interesting, or has the most potential to be interesting. I have deep concerns that Fennekin will just look like a rip-off version of Ninetales, but then again, I am quite a cynical person. It has to be said, I don't think any of the 3 starting type Pokemon are particularly badly designed. I'm just concerned that they'll start looking way too similar to other Pokemon that have already existed. But that may be natural, you might argue, because there are just so bloody many of them. But if we go to Froakie, the final one, of all the 3, this is the one I'm definitely the least happy with. And the only reason for that, really, other than the fact I'm not a huge fan of design, I don't like the fact it's yet another frog. Especially because Seismitoad, let's be honest here, is rubbish. Admittedly, it's a water and ground type, so it's not just generic water, but I am a person that, even not quite for design's sake, I really liked using Poliwrath, because I am old enough to have been from the 1st generation, and I always thought that Pokemon was very interesting to use. It being water fighting was quite an interesting combination. We really don't know anything about what this type could turn into based upon how it looks. I actually thought at first sighting it could be a water ice, but I really hope it isn't because we have so many water ices, it's unbelievable. Having said that though, we haven't had a water ice type starter yet, so at least it would be unique in that regard. I have heard many friends of mine say that, oh, it might be water poison. That's not unique either, but it is at least more unique than being plain water. Obviously water poison types including Quillfish and Tentacle family. But water poison would be sort of interesting, but another theory has been that this will be a water fighting type, because fire is super effective on grass, grass on water, water on fire. But if you reverse that round, if it was water fighting, Chespin being grass dark potentially, and Fennekin being fire psychic potentially, you have another type trio where dark is super effective on psychic, psychic super effective on fighting, and fighting super effective on dark. That's arguably one way that they could do the balance. Now we'll move on from the starter Pokemon and move on to a Pokemon I've actually kind of put a video out about before, and that's Sylveon. Evolutions inevitably get a lot of attention because Eevee is a pretty good Pokemon and most of its evolutions are pretty good. Flareon could be a notable exception as being not particularly brilliant, although having said that, quite a few people use it regardless. But Sylveon, there has been a lot of arguing over what type it could be, and like I said, I put a video out earlier about this just to try and gauge what people think the typing might be. I personally always thought it was going to be a flying type. It could not be, it could well be something else. If we're going on the anime, or an anime about it, they had a bit of an indication, but the reason I don't trust animes when it comes to predicting Pokemon's types is because quite frequently in older animes the typing of moves has not been particularly reliable as a gauge, mainly because you'll see frequently in the anime things like Thunderbolt affecting ground types and things along that line. So don't play that with too much bias towards the anime or towards mangas if the potential comes out for there too. All I would argue is that it probably is not going to be a type that already exists. So you've got a few options there. Obviously there's going to be around 10 types it could potentially be, around that ballpark, depending on whether there's new types or not, which again is speculation at this point in time. So obviously I'm not going to comment too much on it. If it was a new typing, that's interesting. If you're like me, again from the first generation, and you had to learn 2 more types when it came to the second generation, learning another may not appeal too much to you, but that's not really what we're going to talk about. All I'm going to say here is I actually quite like Sylveon's design. If it is indeed a flying type though, I've always had the thought to myself, well, what type of flying type moves could it physically learn? It doesn't look like it can fly, it doesn't look like it can roost, it doesn't look like it'd be able to use air slash. So what's it going to use? Most evolutions struggle with their lack of move pools anyway. So this one could really be the cream of the crop when it comes to lack of moves to use if it is indeed flying type. We don't know what type it is though, just to say that again. Now there were some more Pokemon that were shown very recently in fact, and we'll start going through them now. First one was actually one that I thought, oh, might be quite interested by, Fletchling, which looks like a Robin, very simply put, and it has been shown to be able to use Flame Charge, so I thought to myself, oh, they might be breaking the mould up and using a Fire Flying type combination to begin the game with, because we always have a normal flying type at the start of the game, pretty much. No, it's a normal flying type. I wasn't massively thrilled by this, but then I did think to myself, I didn't think it was very good when Starly was normal flying, and that actually evolves into a Pokemon that's pretty usable. And had it have had extreme speed rather than quick attack, it probably could have pushed its way into the OU tier, in fact, in this generation. So I shouldn't judge a book too much by its cover. Flame Charge obviously raising its Pokemon speed by 1 stage, and I assume that won't change for the 6th generation. That's going to be a pretty good move in most Pokemon's arsenal, so it might be a normal flying type that doesn't completely suck. We don't really know, but in terms of the design, I actually quite like it. It's very minimalist, and that appeals to the people that like 1st generation stuff. And I'm not one of those elitists that think if it's not 1st generation, it's therefore rubbish. But I just like that it looks very basic, and it looks like it hasn't been tampered with in too many ways. Watch it now evolve into a Pokemon that looks like it's been through a genetics lab and then gone through a fireworks store and had a magnet attached to it. Then we go on to Gogoat, and immediately if you see it you'll just think, wow, that looks like a deerling on steroids. Or at least that's what I thought. It's a grass type, as you may have guessed by the shrubbery for a collar, and I'm going to be honest, I don't particularly like how it looks. It might grow on me, ignore the pun there, but it does look to me like they just took the deerling family and then they took the Tauros family with the afro on it, so it's already had another family taken from it to design a new Pokemon, the Bufalon family, and then try to merge them together. For all we know, it could be really good. I believe it gets Horn Leech, which used to be a unique move to the Deerling family tree, but obviously now it is not. So that is a good move. It's like Giga Drain but physical. So it proves that grass types can definitely hit off more than one spectrum. Tangrowth in the past being an example that can try and use both at once, potentially. But I'm not too enthused by how it looks, like I said. Hopefully it'll be pretty good in battle, but pure grass types, it's not very good on a competitive level. Pure grass has a lot of weaknesses in grass, although it may be super effective on water types, which are incredibly abundant in the competitive game or just in-game, because obviously there will inevitably be a part where you are surfing or going on water somewhere. Not too thrilled. Now we move on to this is my least favourite of all of them. Helioptile. To me, this, before I knew its typing, just looked like a really rubbish Mawile. It's got the same colour scheme. It's got the same derpy look, frankly. But I then saw that it was an electric normal type, and then I thought to myself, well, at least it's unique in the type front. And it has shown that it can learn a move called, or let me check, Parabolic Charge, I believe it is. And it's going to be a healing electric type move that does damage and heals, so it's a sort of like, I guess, Drain Punch, something like that. But I believe it affects an area rather than just a single target. What this could evolve to, it can't get any uglier, frankly. So watch me have to eat my words about that later. But I'm not entirely sure. I would have thought, if anything, if it was going to be as it is designed, I thought it would potentially be electric ground like Stunfisk. Hopefully a lot better than Stunfisk. But like I said, at least normal electric is unique. It does, however, give it a nasty weakness to fighting. And if fighting is anywhere near as prominent in the next generation as it is in the current 5th generation, having a part normal typing is going to be a hindrance rather than a blessing. But again, at least it's unique. Pancham is actually a Pokemon that I think is very interesting, because I thought for a long time that there was going to be a Panda Pokemon and there just never really was. And apparently it's going to be fighting type, which was not what I first thought when I just looked at it physically. I thought, you know, with the normal mentality with Pokemon games, it tends to be the same typing as it is colour. So if you were basing on that, you could say it's a dark type, or arguably a normal dark type. No, it's going to be a fighting type. And, well, I think it's going to be quite interesting, simply because it is at least a design that's reasonably new. Apparently it can learn a new move called Parting Shot, which lowers both attack stats, and it allows the Pokemon to switch out, I believe, as well. So it's a bit like a Memento without the dying effect. Memento being pretty much only ever used on Jumpluff, mainly because it's not particularly easy to run within a team, especially on a competitive level. In-game, it's useless. I'm thinking, unfortunately though, that it'll probably evolve into something really, really stupid looking. Now I hope I'm wrong, because I quite like it as it is, at least in the uniqueness stage, but I do hope it doesn't just turn into a bigger panda with boxing gloves, or be like the Scraggy and Scrafty combination, which, now we've had years to look at them, I'm still not particularly pleased with the appearance of that Pokemon, it has to be said. I was quite critical of it at the time, and I still don't like it now. So let's be optimistic and think that the evolution could be really good looking. There are some more Pokemon, obviously, than that, so let's go on to a few more. Let's go on to the legendaries. And I'm going to inevitably butcher the names of these Pokemon because they're quite weird spelling and therefore quite hard to pronounce. So we're just going to go with the Pokemon X Legendary, which is effectively, it's a stag with deer, effectively, not a beetle, with a whole range of antlers on it, of all different colours, which I'm guessing potentially could symbolise every type colour. That could be completely wrong, of course, and it very much is likely to be wrong. That's what speculation is all about. But I do quite like its design, actually, much more than its counterpart, the Pokemon Y Legendary, which is, well, I can't even describe to you what it is. It's like part hawk, part lava volcano, part weird aerodynamic head. It's a right mixture. What it could do is very interesting. Inevitably, these two Pokemon will almost certainly go into the Uber tier, and therefore we will barely ever see them on a competitive level, which is a shame. But if we're going on design and appearance only at this point in time, the Pokemon X Legendary, in my opinion, looks far more interesting. It looks sleeker. It looks, I'm assuming, a bit more wide range in its move pool more than anything else. Generally speaking, the more colours a Pokemon is, the more different varieties of type it can use. Not always the case, but that's quite often the case. But generally speaking, legendary Pokemons, they don't tend to wow you with their appearance in a good way initially. They tend to be Pokemon in every generation where you think, oh wow, they're weird looking. And then you let it sink in and they actually look a lot better over time. I know when I first looked at Giratina, And I thought, well, that is the most stupidly designed dragon type ever. And then it grew on me. I actually quite like the original Giratina form. I'm still not a big fan of the origin form, but the original form I think is quite good looking. And of course, we can't go through a video about new Pokemon without mentioning Mewtwo's new form. Where do I start on this one? When I kind of brought this up on Twitter a while ago, I actually had to delete the tweets because people got very animated about it. Well, on one hand, people were like, brilliant, Mewtwo's got a new form, therefore we can be innovative with it and it can be reused again, and hopefully it won't be too overpowered and we'll be able to use it competitively outside of Ubers. And on the flip side, I got lots of people saying, why would you tamper with a Pokemon like this that was a classic? Now it looks even more stupid than before. I am personally of the belief that Mewtwo on Pokemon Battle Revolution looked awful. Looked a lot better on the N64 games, in fact, it looked more intimidating. But there were quite a lot of people that really did not like the appearance of it at all. I am not entirely in either party, I'll be honest with you. Initially, when I heard Mewtwo's getting a new form, I thought, oh, bloody great, sarcasm. And then as I thought about it really, I thought, well, I don't tend to use the Ubertia very often anyway, so it's not a big issue. And let's be honest, this form probably exists so that we can get lots of people buying Pokemon films and attending them in cinemas. So, obviously it's a big money spinner. I really don't like the new form's feet. That's one thing that, do not like that at all. But generally speaking, I'm not offended by it like lots of people sound like they are. So there we are, really. And just to point it out, there have been lots of new Pokemon that have been shown in trailers for Pokemon X and Y. I've actually checked the official Nintendo magazine for all of these. I'll put that in the description, in fact, because I'm not going to waffle through it all for you now. It's quite an interesting read, in fact. But then again, I'm from the days where it was actually called the NOM, the Nintendo official magazine. I guess there was a licensing problem there. So please do leave your comments in the comments section, of course. I always like listening to what you think about the new Pokemon, because it's always an area of great debate. With it being a global release this time around for this set of Pokemon games, we're actually in the stage where for once everybody's on a level playing field with regards to what we know. Nobody has much more secret advice and information than anybody else, so it actually makes the debating far more interesting. So obviously comment if you do, like and favourite the video if you're into that sort of thing, and I'll talk to you again soon.